Hello, good day, and welcome. I am by name Samuel Babatunde, and with me today we're going to be doing or discussing agricultural science. And the topic we're going to be considering today is dicotyledonous plant. That is the second part or the second type of crop plant form. We've been discussing about the classification of crops, but then we look at what the various forms of crop plants. That is forms of crop plant form, and we discuss this based on their cotyledon, that is number of seed leaf, where we talk about the monocotyledon in the previous class, because I told you that based on the number of cotyledons or the size of cotyledon, that plants are divided into two forms, that is those with one seed leaf and those with what two seed leaves. That is, the seeds of one has just one seed leaf, which is the cotyledon, one cotyledon, and the seeds of the other has two seed leaves, which are two cotyledon. And we say based on this, we'll classify plants into monocotyledonous plants. Mono simply means one, that means one cotyledon, and dicotyledonous plant. Di simply means two, meaning two cotyledon. And then we look at the monocotyledonous plants. We look at their meaning and some examples, and then we look at various examples and their characteristics. And we say for us to discuss these characteristics of these monocot plants, we have to discuss them based on the parts of the plant. And like we know, we have several parts of plant, just like we have the parts of the body. So also we have the parts of the plant, which is the leaf, the stem, the flowers, the roots, the seeds, and so on. So today we're going to discuss about the second part or the second type of crop plant form, which is the dicotyledonous plants. So we are discussing the dicotyledonous plants today, and we're going to be seeing the meaning, the examples, and the characteristics of these dicot plants. Like I said before, that my name is Samuel Babatunde, and the topic for discussion today is crop plants form or forms of crop plants. And like we know, we've discussed in our previous class monocotyledonous plants, but today we'll be looking at dicotyledonous plants. If you remember in our previous class, I told you that crop is any plant that has a useful purpose or economic value. A useful purpose, that is, crop are plants that are useful to man for food or for economic value, for trading. For trading, I told you, for instance, see your crop like cocoa is a crop for economic value. We call them cash crop because what you exchange this crop, you export them from one country to another. And crop plants are grouped into two based on the structure of their seed leaf or the number of their seed leaf they contain. Like I told you, so it is based on this what number of seed leaves they contain that we group plants into what different forms. And we say that what some has just one seed leaf and we call them the monocotyledon, and then some has two seed leaves, we call them the dicotyledon. And for today's class, we'll be dealing more with what the dicotyledonous plants, because we've talked about the monocot plants in the previous class. Now, what are dicot plants? Like I told you earlier on, I say when you hear of the word dicotyledon, just divide it into two, the di and the cotyledon. The cotyledon here simply means the seed leaf, seed leaf. Then the di here simply means two. Now, when you combine these words together, dicotyledonous plants, these are plants which have seeds with two seed leaves. That is, their seeds have what two cotyledon. That is what the seed possesses two seed leaves. So this is just a simple definition of a dicotyledonous plant. So wherever you hear of a dicotyledonous plant, or wherever you come across the word dicotyledonous plant, it just simply means plants which have what seeds with two seed leaves. That is, these seeds have what two cotyledon, because cotyledon is a synonym of seed leaves. Now, what are the examples of dicotyledonous plants? We have various examples, numerous examples of dicotyledonous plants, even in our surrounding. You don't need to go to the farm to find this plant because they are everywhere. And I just list out some examples here. Number one is your cowpea. Your cowpea, you have the cola, you have the melon, you have pepper, melon, which you know as egusi, you have pepper, you have granite, you have cocoa, you have watermelon, you have your mangoes, your oranges. All these are what? All these are examples of dicotyledonous plants. They are dicotyledonous crop. I'll go over the examples again. I say you have the cowpea, you have the cola, the melon, pepper, groundnuts, cocoa, mango, oranges, so on. They are numerous. These plants are called dicotyledonous plants because what? Because their seeds has two seed leaves. That is, their seed has what? Two cotyledon, and we refer to them as dicotyledonous plants. Now, what are the characteristics of these dicotyledonous plants? That is, what are the things, what are the physical properties you see that you know and you are assured that what this plant is a dicotyledonous plant, that this plant is not a monocotyledonous plant. You see some features, you see some characteristics. Now we're going to discuss these characteristics again based on the various parts of the plant. That is, when you look at the leaf of this plant, what we assure you that yes, this plant is dicotyledonous plant. When you look at the roots of this plant, what we assure you that what this plant is a dicot plant. When you look at the stem of this plant, what we assure you that this plant is a dicot plant. When you look at the flowers, what we assure you that this plant is a dicot plant and not a monocot plant. So these characteristics are what you're going to be looking at. And like I said, we'll look at these characteristics based on the various parts of the plant. And like we know, one of the major important parts of the plant is the leaves. And we have to discuss about the characteristics of this leaf so that when you see this leaf, you just know that yes, this plant belongs to a dicot plant. So it is not a monocot. Now, what are the characteristics? Now, when you say dicot plant or when you say dicot leaf, the first thing you notice is that what they have short and broad leaves. The leaves are short and broad compared to the monocot plant, which has long and what long and long and narrow leaves. In terms of the monocot plant, their leaves is what long and narrow, like your maize. You see the maize. Maize is an example of monocot plant. You see it is long and narrow. But if you see the dicot plant, the leaves are short and broad. And an example is your what? An example is your orange tree. You see your orange tree. The leaves are what short and what short and broad leaves. Also your mango leaves. So this is one of the characteristics of the leaf of a dicot. Also, the leaf base is narrow. Now, this is a diagram of a dicot plant here, of a dicot leaf. You can see it. See the leaf short and broad. You can see it is broad compared to the what a monocot plant. And look at the leaf base. See the leaf base is narrow. But in terms of a monocot plant now, the leaf base is what? The leaf base circles or it encompasses, like it covers the stem. It has a broad leaf base. That's for the monocot. But for the dicot, the leaf base is narrow. Then the leaves has net venation. You can see the venation. And like I told you, I say venation simply means what? The vascular bundles present in the leaf. Arrangement of the vascular bundles in the leaf of a dicot is in what? Is in a net arrangement. You can see the arrangement here. Net arrangement, unlike in the what? In the monocot. Now, the venation of a monocot is what? Parallel. The leaves of a monocot plant has parallel venation, but that of a dicot plant has a net venation. That is, these vascular bundles are arranged what in a net-like manner. But for the monocot, the vascular bundles are arranged what parallel to each other. Now, another point is that the leaves have stalk or petiole. Now, this is a stalk. This is a stalk. This is the leaf stalk here. This is a leaf stalk or the petiole. That is that part of the leaf that attaches it to the stem, or that attaches it to the what? To the branches. So this is the what? This is the petiole, or we call it the leaf stalk or the petiole. Now, this leaf stalk is absent in a monocot plant. So once you see a plant with a leaf stalk or petiole, automatically this plant is a dicotyledonous plant, because a monocotyledonous plant do not possess a petiole or leaf stalk. A monocotyledonous plant will not have a leaf stalk or petiole, but a dicot plant will always possess a petiole, a leaf stalk. So these are the characteristics of a dicotyledonous leaf. They have short and broad leaves. The leaf base is narrow. The leaves has net venation, and the leaf have stalk or petiole. And I told you this is a diagram. You can see it. See the presence of a stalk, a leaf stalk, and a petiole. You can see the net variation. You can see the leaves is broad and short. It's not as long as the monocot. And you can see the venation. There's net venation. So these are the characteristics of the leaf of a dicotyledonous plant. Now let's move to the what? To the stem. That is, when you see a stem, when you see the stem of a dicot plant, what are the characteristics? What are the things you see or notice and you agree that yes, this plant is a dicotyledonous plant? Now, once you see the stem have branches. The stem have branches. Look at the diagram here. You can see this diagram here. You can see the branch. This is a typical example of a dicot plant. Now, see this dicot plant, it has a branch. This is a branch. So when you see a dicot plant, they have branches. The stem has branches. But if you remember in our previous class, when we were discussing about the monocot plant, we see that one characteristics of the stem of a monocot plant is that it do not have a branch. They lack branches. They do not possess branches. You can see. So once you see a plant, once you see a tree, once you see a plant with branches, automatically this plant is a dicotyledonous plant. But once you see a plant without branches at all, what should come to your mind? You should know that, well, this plant is a monocotyledonous plant. So the stem of a dicot plant has branches. Also, they have what arranged vascular bundle. Their vascular bundle is arranged, unlike the monocot plant. In terms of the monocot plant, but the stem has what scattered vascular bundle. The vascular bundles are scattered. And this vascular bundle will include your phloem and xylem. And like I said the xylem is responsible for the conduction of water and mineral salts from the roots to the what to the various parts of the plant. But the phloem is responsible for the what translocation of food manufactured by the plants through the leaf, from the leaf to various parts of the plant for storage or for consumption. So therefore, the vascular bundles, this xylem and phloem present in a dicot plant are well arranged. They are arranged, but in terms of a monocot plant, they are scattered. Now we progress to the what? To the flowers of a dicot plant. That is, when you see a dicot plant, when you see the flower of a dicot plant, these characteristics will enable you to know that what this is actually a dicotyledonous plant. Now the flowers are usually colorful and conspicuous, beautiful. The flowers are usually colorful, they are beautiful compared to the monocotyledonous plant. The monocotyledonous plant flowers are not colorful at all. They don't have color. They're usually green. They are usually green. The monocotyledonous flower are usually green and inconspicuous. But that of a dicot plant is colorful. Then the flower parts are usually arranged in what? In 4 or 5 or multiples of 4 or 5. But for that of the monocots, they are arranged in threes or multiple of threes. But for a dicot plant, these flowers are arranged in 5 or 4 or multiples of 4 and 5. And the flower are scented. They have scent. They have aroma. They have scent. The monocot flowers do not have scent, but the dicotyledonous flower have scent. But the flowers of a monocot do not have scent. You can carry this practical. When you get home, you look for a monocotyledonous plant, which is a maize, cut out the flower, and then perceive if there's any scent. Then also look for a dicot plant like your hibiscus flower or your rose flower. Cut this flower out and check out the scent. You notice that what the dicot plant has scent, while the monocot plant, which is the maize, do not have scent. The flowers do not have scent. Now, the flowers are usually pollinated by insects and birds. The flowers of a dicot plant are pollinated by insects and birds. Remember, I said pollination simply refers to the transfer of what and pollen grains, as the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of a flower to the stigma. This is pollination, and we have various agents of pollination. That is various things that brings about pollination. We have the wind, we have insects, we have birds, the animal factors. All this brings about what pollination. And like we said in our previous class, we see that what the monocot plants are normally pollinated by wind. This is because their flowers do not what have scent, and their flowers are colorless. And because of this, these flowers do not attract insects nor birds. So the only way for pollination is by wind. But the flowers of a dicot plant has what? They have scent, and they are beautiful, they are colorful, they are conspicuous. So therefore they attract insects. They attract what? They attract birds because they are colorful, they are scented, they have juice in them. So they attract these insects. And once these insects come to these flowers or birds come to this flower, what happens? They bring about pollination. So the flowers of a dicot plant are usually pollinated by insects and birds, unlike that of the monocot plant that is only pollinated by wind. Now this is a diagram of a dicot flower. You can see it. You can see it arranged in the what? It is arranged in multiples of 4 and 3. You can see how colorful it is. It is colorful. It is conspicuous. Look at it. It is colorful. It has scent. If you perceive this flower now, you see that it has scent. Look at this one also. You can see the color of this flower. It has scent. It has scent. And it's pollinated mainly by what? By birds or insects. by birds or insects. So this is a typical example of a dicot flower. Now let's look at the roots of a dicotyledonous plant. When you see the roots of a dicotyledonous plant, what are the things you see? What are the noticeable things that you observe? Now, the roots of a dicot plant possess what we call the taproot system. The taproot system. Like I told you, I said we have two types of root system. We have the fibrous root system and the taproot system. And the fibrous root system is that possessed by the monocot plants. Their root system is what? It's not long. They don't have what? A deep root. The root is just fibrous. It is scattered and clustered around each other. But that of a dicot plant, it has a taproot. From the name taproot, it has a root that goes deep into the ground to tap water to get the water supply. So this dicot root, the dicot root is a taproot system. It goes down. As you can see from this diagram, you can see it. This is a taproot system. The root will go down to get what? To get access to water. Unlike the monocot root, which is what? Which is fibrous. So the root system of a monocot plant, of a dicot plant, is the taproot system, but that of a monocot plant is the fibrous root system. For a dicot plant is the what? Taproot system. Take note. And this is the diagram. Now let's go to the leaves, to the seeds of a dicot plant. Now when you see the seed of a dicot plant, the things you observe is that they have two seed leaves. Like we know, a dicot plant already is what is called a dicot plant because this leaf has two seed leaves. So already you should know that what the leaves of a dicot plant has two cotyledon. That is, they have what? Two seed leaves. Now the seed usually break naturally into two different halves. That is, when you plant this seed, automatically this seed has to break into what? Two seed half naturally. Unlike the monocot plant will not break naturally into two different halves. But the dicot plant, example your mango, like I told you, all these things are something like you can what practicalize. Just go home, take a mango seed. You notice that what this when you plant these seeds will break what naturally into two different halves. Now plant a maize seed, and you see that this maize seed will not divide into two different halves. Now you can see that what the mango that divided is a dicotyledonous plant, but the maize which do not divide is a monocotyledonous plant. Now they exhibit a type of germination we call the epigeal germination. We call this epigeal germination because the cotyledon, the seed leaf, is raised above the ground during germination. And we call this type of germination the epigeal germination. So whenever you notice or observe this type of germination, definitely that plant is a dicotyledonous plant, because epigeal germination is a type of germination in which the cotyledon is raised above the ground during germination. And this type of germination is described or is mainly a characteristics of a dicotyledonous plant. But whenever you observe that this this cotyledon remain in the ground, that is, this cotyledon remains buried in the ground even after germination of this seed, then you know that this is a what? This is a monocot plant. And that type of germination is what we refer to as the hypogeal germination. From the word hypo simply means below, and then epi simply means above. So epigeal simply means what? The cotyledon is above the ground during germination. But when you hear the word hypogeal, it simply means the cotyledon is below the ground during germination. And the hypogeal is the main characteristics of the monocot plants, while the epigeal is the main characteristics of the what exhibited by a dicotyledonous plant. Now look at this diagram here. This is the seed when it was planted. Look at the seed, it begins to germinate. Now what happens? This seed has sprouted. You can see the cotyledon up now, and you can see the cotyledon divide. The seed divides into two. This is the two seed leaves. You can see it. These are the two seed leaves, and that's why we call it a dicotyledonous plant. A dicotyledonous plant. You can see the two cotyledon here into two seed leaves. And look at the cotyledon above the ground. And this type is called the epigeal germination because the cotyledon is raised above the ground. It's raised above the soil level during germination. But in a case where this cotyledon is to remain in the ground or remain buried in the ground, we call it the hypogeal germination, and it is a characteristics of a monocotyledonous plant. So with this, we've discussed about the various characteristics of a dicotyledonous plant based or according to the different parts of the plant. So here is a short question. You to mention 5 characteristics of a dicotyledonous plant. Just give me 5 characteristics of a dicotyledonous plant, be it from the leaf, the roots, the stem, the flowers, or the seed. I just need 5 characteristics of a dicotyledonous plant. Now, before we go, I'll do a brief recap. That is, I will just talk about what we've discussed briefly before we go. Like I said, our topic is forms of crop plants or the crop plant form, and we say this crop plants are divided into 2 forms based on the number or the structure of the seed leaves that the seed contains. And because of this, we say these seed leaves, also known as the cotyledon, can either be 1 seed leaf or 2 seed leaf, and so therefore these plants are divided into 2. The monocotyledonous plant, meaning plants with seeds which has 1 seed leaf, and dicotyledonous plants with 2 seed leaves or 2 cotyledon. And then for the purpose of this class, we looked at the dicotyledonous plants into details, because in our previous class we've discussed about the monocotyledonous plants. And we say dicot plants are plants which have seeds with 2 seed leaves or cotyledon. That is, they possess only 2 seed leaves. And I give examples. We say the cowpea, the cola, the pepper, the mango, the orange, and so on. And then we discuss about the characteristics of this dicotyledonous plant. And we say that these characteristics actually discussed in accordance to the various parts of the plant, the leaves, and we discussed about the leaf, that when you see the leaf of a dicot plant, these are the observable features you see. We say the leaves are short and broad, like you can see, short leaf and broad. The leaf base is narrow, unlike the monocot, which is broad. The leaf has net venation, that is, the vascular bundles in the leaf are arranged in a net-like manner, and that the leaf possesses what? Stalk or petiole. This is the leaf stalk that attaches it to the what? To the branches. This is it. But this is actually absent in a monocot plant. And then we look at the stem. We say the stem have branches, unlike the monocot plants that do not possess branches. You can see the branch of this tree. This is a typical example of a dicot plant. And that the stem has vascular bundles arranged, that the vascular bundles of a dicot are arranged. They are not scattered like the unlike the monocot plant that has scattered vascular bundles. And remember, I told you that these vascular bundles simply refers to the conducting vessels. These conducting vessels are what we call the vascular bundles. And we have the 2 main vascular bundles. This is the phloem and the xylem. And I say the phloem is responsible for the translocation of food manufactured by the leaves to various parts of the body of the plant, while the xylem is a conducting vessel responsible for the conduction of water, the transport of water from the soil, that is from the roots to various parts of the plant. And these conducting vessels or vascular bundles are actually arranged in the stem of a dicot plant. Now, the flowers of a dicot plant, like we say, look at the example flower of a dicot plant. We see these flowers are beautiful, that they are colorful and conspicuous, and that these flowers have scent, unlike the monocot plants. And these flowers are arranged in 4 or 5, and multiples of 4 and 5. And that these flowers are actually pollinated by birds and insects. And I see the main reason why these flowers are pollinated by birds and insects is because of the beauty of this flower, because of the color of this flower and the scent of this flower. It attracts what the insects and the birds. And you know, insects and birds are actually attracted by sweet things, by pleasant things. So because these flowers are colorful, they are pleasant to the eyes and even to the nose, what happens? They attract these insects. And as these insects and birds carry out their activities on this flower, they help in pollinating this flower. So we move straight to the roots of this dicot plant, and we see when you observe the roots of a dicot plant, you notice that they possess the taproot system. They have a very long roots, unlike the monocot plant, which has a fibrous system, short root and roots clustered together. And lastly, we look at the seeds of the dicot plant, and we say dicot plant possesses 2 seed leaf, and that this seeds is capable of breaking naturally into 2 different halves during germination. And we say that this dicot plant possesses a special type of germination we refer to as the epigeal germination. We call it epigeal germination. That is, the cotyledon is raised above the soil. This cotyledon is raised above the soil during germination, unlike the other type of germination, which is the hypogeal germination possessed by the monocot plants, in which the cotyledon remains in the soil during germination. And you can see the diagram here on the screen. You can see this the leaf, the seed when planted and going through the various stages of germination. You can see how it's divided into two naturally, and then giving rise to the two cotyledon, and then now sprouting up. You can see the seeds above the soil, the epigeal germination. Look at it here. And like you know, this cotyledon is actually a storehouse of energy for the plant. This is where the plant, the germinating seeds, store its food. This is where the germinating seeds store its food. So with this, we've come to the end of today's lesson. And remember your assignment. I gave you an assignment. I say mention 5 characteristics of a dicotyledonous plant. Now, this assignment is to be submitted on the WhatsApp group. That is, the assignment is to be submitted on the WhatsApp page. If you're not on the WhatsApp page, you'll see a number on the screen. Please contact that number so it can be added to the WhatsApp page. With this, we've come to the end of today's lesson on dicotyledonous plants. I still remain Samuel Babatunde. Thank you and goodbye.